This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Ben Turney, the CEO of Kavango Resources, joins us today for this special feature, taking a look at the latest model and imagery of the exploration data following the completion of the drilling at the B1 Conductor target at the KSZ. So Ben, welcome back. This is the second time we're speaking in a day. Of course, we did the interview this morning off the back of the RNS. I've had people comment on YouTube and I've had some people message me directly. So I want to put a question to you first of all, and it's a question that came from a shareholder, which says, the B1 slides from the 9th of Jan seem to show two distinct conductors, plus you've had the benefit of the DHEM at 350 metres. Why did the drill continue to target the middle of the overall target?
Yeah, so I can see where the confusion has come from this. To be honest, it's something that we overlooked. So when you're creating an individual plate model, and we've worked on the assumption from the original TDEM data that there was a single body down there, there isn't just one individual plate. The plate itself is created using a series of mathematical calculations, and into those calculations you have to build assumptions. So what you can actually see on this model here were variations of the original plate. So you look at a sort of a range of possible numbers that could go in, that can be modeled, that might explain sort of the dimensions of the plate. And then from that, you then look to figure out where is the best place to site your drill hole. Now, thinking about this, we haven't explained that properly, I don't think. And that's something that, moving forward in terms of our communications, that's certainly something we'll look to address. So the simple answer is that for this individual B1 conductor plate that we had, there were actually three plates that we had in the public domain because we were actually working with three individual plates. So I can understand why the viewer has asked that question, but it's not as simple as saying, oh, well, it was clear there were multiple conductors down there, because it wasn't clear. And it's standard operating procedure in the industry that when you're looking at, so you're using geophysics-led surveys, remote sensing technology to identify potential conductor targets, you have to sort of make a decision on whether or not you think there's one or multiple targets. And best practice dictates typically you go for one target, you go for one plate, you drill the center of that plate to maximize your chances of hitting the target if it is an individual target. However, if the underlying geology turns out to be more complicated, more complex, more geometrically complex, and there are multiple targets down there, well, that's why you do the downhole surveys. And this is why DHEM is so important, because then you can get data from the actual target horizon that you're looking for, which is basically what we're looking at today. This is quite common practice in nickel sulfide exploration and also, more importantly, Mark, discoveries.
Okay, so it is common practice then to almost go for the middle of the target. I was just trying to think how you plan looking at the conductor zones and the targets. How accurate can you be? But it's common practice to almost go straight for the middle.
You go straight for the middle of a single target. You work on the basis it's a single target because you have to start somewhere, and then you work from there. Hopefully it is a single target and you hit it. Or in the case of what we're looking at with the DHEM results that we put out today, we've actually got two targets down there.
Okay. And it's a DHEM that's allowed you to establish that you've got two targets.
Yeah, so I think one of the other questions that this viewer asked was, well, why didn't we change the direction of the hole from 350 metres? Because we obviously did DHEM down to that, and in the announcement that we put out before Christmas, we were still heading for the centre of this conductive plate. So we still believed it was a single body, and we were going for that on the basis, of the drill rationale on that basis. Now, obviously, when we were at that point, we were still about 200 metres short of the target, so the plate was still modelling as a single individual plate. It was only when we passed through that center of that plate and we passed between the two targets that when we actually ran the downhole survey and we could get the very clearly delineated data points, that we could actually see that there was one hole in one target off one direction of the hole and one target off the other direction of the hole. I'm about to show you that in one of the other slides.
Okay. So these plates then that you've created here, how are they created? They're very complicated mathematical that goes into creating this?
It is. I mean, this is part of the reason that these results sort of took so long to delay. Now, when we spoke in our interview earlier, I talked about some of the operational delays we had with the problems down at 470 metres. The other major delay was the time it took to figure out what the data actually meant. I mean, this is complex maths. When you're dealing with subsurface bodies that are geometrically quite complex, both in terms of their shape and their orientation, trying to determine what's actually happening down there based on the readings. It's not an easy task and does require some pretty powerful, sophisticated modeling software, and just working through that takes time. But what we've ended up with, which I think people have lost sight a bit of today, is that we've now got this 16,000 Siemens conductor target that's smaller. We don't know the dimensions of it yet because we've got more work we need to follow up. But what's very interesting is that the vertical conductor, the smaller Siemens, is about 2,500, which we believe could conform to a net textured sulfide. This is a much larger target. Now, if it does turn out to be what we think it might be, a possible feeder dike, that could be extremely interesting for the potential for offshoots from that, which may well be magmatic sulfide bodies.
Okay. So how significant is it then that there's potentially now two targets here, and you've generated two models, and also that 16,000 Siemens model, yeah, extremely high. I think you suggested it could indicate nickel and copper.
Well, it's a major upgrade of the target.
Okay.
Look, I realize the market's down quite heavily today in terms of our stock. Obviously, we've got Ukraine and everything that's going on there. But the simple fact is, we now do have this fantastic looking target. We're very confident about it from surface, but this is the first look we've got at this thing from down at the depth that this thing is actually located at. So obviously we need to go and drill it. I'm not going to sit here and say, we've made a discovery, because clearly we haven't. And, if we look at the next slide, basically, this is what's happened. Our drill hole has passed between these two targets. Obviously, we need to go and drill this again in future, but there's more work that we need to do, both to confirm the orientation, the size and the shape of this target, but also the smaller conductance one as well. So it would be pretty rash for us immediately to rush out and start drilling either of these until we've got a much clearer idea of their actual makeup, so that we can maximize chances of success. But the important thing is that now we've got a high degree of confidence that we have these two targets, because we've passed them, we've seen them very clearly. That enables us to go back and do a complete reinterpretation on the original calculations that were made from the original data and the original modeling. We've also got recommendations for more loops that we're going to run. So we're going to run some additional surface loops to get sort of different looks or different views at these two targets from different angles. That will help us a great deal as well. And we're also going to look in the surrounding area. We need to see sort of what else there might be, because if it turns out that this is a feeder dike, and if it turns out this is a nickel copper sulfide body, obviously these are all big ifs. I've got to really emphasize that. But if it turns out that that's correct, then what you would expect, based on sort of deposit models elsewhere around the world, is that these types of deposits do appear in clusters. They appear in groups. Now, we've done very limited TDEM survey, and I'll take you on to that slide now. You can see that this area, the Great Red Spot, which is where we're currently drilling, we've only run 2 TDEM surveys here. We ran 9 TDEM surveys in total last year. This is the 30-kilometer strike, which we've also got very little coverage of as well. So there's a huge amount that we could have still got to learn about this using the right technology from surface. But with what we've learned so far, and with this very specific lead that we have as a result of the drill results, it's looking really very exciting at this stage.
Okay, just going back to that other slide then, Ben, where you've got the two plates there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just thinking back to the original model that Kavango put out, where it kind of explained the gabbro style and the feeder dikes. Is that what we're looking at here then, with that vertical one and then the deposit?
It's exactly that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's exactly that, Mark. And as I say, so it's exactly that model. So we're talking about like an idealized model, but it does conform to exactly the style of deposit that we were looking for. Now, obviously, we need to find more data. We need to drill these targets. So it's again, I've got to be cautious about sort of being too optimistic. But our guys are feeling very confident about this at this stage. Now, obviously, what we need to look at is what our next steps are going to be. We are under pressure to drill these targets. I understand that, but we've also got to do what's right by the program. We need to do this in a very measured and balanced way to make sure we maximize our chances of success.
Okay. And the drill that went down, did that show anything then in the results?
So at this point, it's too early to say. We've done some initial readings ourselves, but it's nothing that we want to put into the public domain. We will be sending off some samples for assay testing and for petrology testing. We want to understand more about the system itself, so that's obviously clear. We've obviously got visual indications, as we said in the RNS, so we know that we intercepted that quite thick layer of gabbro, which is at our target depth horizon. So we're pretty encouraged by that. We believe that could be the type of rock that we would be looking for. Interestingly, the coloration on this gabbro is different to what we saw a kilometre away on the kilometre hole. So it looks like it's coarser grained, which possibly could be encouraging. But again, it's too early for us to say. I mean, we obviously mentioned that in the RNS, but we need to wait for the actual assay tests to come back and also the petrology as well.
Okay. Well, another question that came in was regarding early signs there. The question is, what minerals did you detect using XRF? Did you do that?
Yeah, well, of course. But the thing is, we don't release XRF results. The company had a very bad experience back in 2019. I appreciate that people want to know as quickly as they can what might be there. And you might even feel that I'm ducking the question, but I'm just not going to put out any information that might be misleading. And the thing is with XRF, it's basically a quick and dirty sort of field testing technique. It's not anything that anyone can particularly rely on.
So no traces of metals or signatures there, like nickel, copper, traces of gold, PGMs. You can't.
Nice try, Mark. I'm not answering that at this stage. Look, we're sending the samples off for testing.
Okay.
We've got this definitively, clearly conductive body that is about 150 meters away from the hole. It's 16,000 Siemens. That is well into the range, upper range of massive sulfides from a geophysical point of view. We are going to come back and drill this at some point, and we'll obviously release results when we've got something definitive to show.
Okay. So waiting for the assay results, the firm assay results. Okay.
Exactly.
So what comes next then? I mean, I know obviously you're moving on the drilling to Ditto, as you presumably plan the next stage here at the KSZ. What would be the next stage? Is it now targeted drilling?
So in terms of the next stage, as I mentioned with this map, we've got very little TDEM coverage over this area. We're going to take the opportunity to run quite a lot more TDEM. We want to look both at the Great Red Spot and also the 30-kilometre strike, which is this target area down here, which overlaps with target area A, where we drilled the 2 holes earlier in the summer. Next immediate steps, we've got petrology work coming through from the 2 deep holes we drilled, plus assay results. Those will be with us hopefully very, very soon. They've been delayed after what's gone on in South Africa. But we also want to, we've also got the downhole EM, which we've successfully managed to do from TA2 DD002. So we'll have results from that hopefully very soon with interpretation. But we want to look for more targets now. This was proof of concept last year. So the TDEM surveys that we ran, we did sort of very limited coverage. We want to expand on that now quite significantly so that when the drill rig is ready to mobilize back from Dittel, we hope to have built an inventory of targets for us to test drill later on this year.
Okay. So again, all about building that picture step by step. The drill rig, Ben, have you got that indefinitely so it can, as soon as it's finished at Ditto, it can come back? What do you know?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much ours indefinitely for as long as we can keep it in the field. So we've got a whole sort of work program planned out for it already, and that was before these results. We're looking at KSZ South as well. We've got some ideas of some holes that we would like to drill down there, but of course we don't know what's going to happen at Ditto yet either. We've got a drill campaign planned there, which we're going to release details on very shortly. But then there's also an expansion campaign on top of that in the event that we're successful down there.
Okay. So ongoing exploration across everywhere. That's good. So
Absolutely.
We can expect to see, some more pieces to the puzzle, as we keep saying. One other question that did come in, Ben, was just on the money front, and you might not be able to answer this, but how long will the 1.7 million last?
Well, it's a bit of a piece of string question. I mean, it will last as quickly as we can spend it. I mean, obviously, we've got to be careful with our budgets. We've got 1.7 million in working capital at the moment. We're fully funded, certainly for the foreseeable future, through the current Dittel campaign, through our work up the KCB, through the TDEM surveys that we're looking at here, and also some additional drilling up in the KSZ. We've got the warrant bank that's in the money. Even after today's share price drop, we've got about £1 million worth of warrants that we're expecting will get exercised in the not too distant future. So that's also another thing that I think is going to help. But we in terms of our operational plans, we're funded to keep on going both with these programs and also up in the KCB as well, where we're currently putting together final details for a cheaper form of drilling called RC drilling and getting that second rig up into the KCB.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ben Turney. Is there anything else need to cover, or if we pretty much covered?
Well, there is actually. I think there's one thing that I should have perhaps explained at the beginning. So in terms of the actual construction of these plates, I'd just like to talk a bit more about the maths, a little bit technical thing to end with.
Mm-hmm.
So when we worked on the basis that there was a single target, what we actually identified with the TDEM survey, the data that we received, but we didn't know at the time, were these 2 sets of data from the 2 conductive bodies, one of which is this 16,000 Siemens target and the other is 2,500 Siemens. The reason that we ended up with a plate model, a single plate model, that's roughly 8,000 to 11,000 Siemens. So from surface, it was 8,000 at 350 meters. We were getting an 11,000 Siemens reading. Is the way this technology works, or the way the interpretation of the data works, is effectively what happened was, because we were working on the basis it was a single target, effectively the data got combined and averaged out to create this body that we're looking at here with those dimensions and also with the Siemens reading. Now that we know that there are two readings, or there are two bodies down there, that's going to help us a great deal, both in terms of obviously determining the size and shape of these, because we've got a very clear idea of their conductors reading. We know what that is. Those numbers won't change. But what we hope is that will mean that our targeting for the next drill holes will be so much more accurate. So overall, today, it's not the result I know that people were looking for, or some people were looking for. They're expecting us to hit massive sulfides immediately. There's not really much we can do about that. But this is nickel copper discovery that we're talking about. I mean, it takes time, and often it takes a number of drill holes before you actually make that discovery. I think with the data that we pulled together today, the next time we come to drill both of these targets, and our plan is to drill both of the targets, so we are looking at 2 more holes here, I think, we have a much higher degree of confidence that we will actually hit both of them.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ben Turney, the CEO of Kavango Resources, for giving us your time today, going into more detail on the KSZ exploration.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like, or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.